Holy moly, what if Roger's signature attack was literally designed to kill an immortal ruler? Yeah, you heard that right. Not just any ruler, but the supreme being of the One Piece world, Imu. The One Piece community just uncovered something absolutely insane about Kamusari, the devastating technique both Roger and Shanks use. Turns out the name itself translates to Death of the Divine in ancient Japanese, and fans are now theorizing that Roger created this move specifically to counter Imu and the so-called celestial rulers of the world government. Think about it. Why would the Pirate King develop an attack with such a specific, bold name unless he knew exactly what kind of enemy he'd be facing? This theory completely changes how we view Roger's final years, Shanks' current role in the story, and what Luffy's endgame battle might actually look like. The Gorosei have shown legitimate fear when discussing Shanks, calling him too much to handle. Could it be because they know he wields the one technique that can actually destroy their master? The evidence is stacking up fast, and it's connecting dots across decades of One Piece lore. From ancient Japanese mythology to the hidden history of the Void Century, everything points to Kamusari being way more than just a powerful hockey slash. This could be the ultimate anti-divinity weapon, passed down from Roger to Shanks, waiting for the perfect moment to shatter the false supremacy of the Celestial Dragons and their immortal leader. So buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most mind-blowing theories the One Piece fandom has ever cooked up. Alright, let's start with the basics that sparked this whole theory explosion. When fans first saw Shanks use Divine Departure against Kid, it looked like just another insanely powerful hockey attack from a Yonko. Clean, devastating, absolutely brutal. But then the Japanese fandom started digging into the actual kanji used for the attack name, and everything changed. The characters used Shenbi don't just mean divine departure in a poetic sense. When you trace these characters back through ancient Japanese texts, specifically the Kojiki, which is over 1,300 years old, you find something way darker. The phrase connects to concepts of avoiding the divine, or more literally, the death of celestial beings. Yeah, that's a massive difference from what most English readers assumed. Now here's where it gets even crazier. Roger used this exact same technique during his prime, which we saw in flashbacks during his battle with Whitebeard and other legendary moments. Roger didn't just randomly pick a cool name for his attack. Everything Roger did had purpose and meaning tied to his understanding of the world's true history. He read the poneglyphs, learned about the Void Century, and discovered secrets that made him laugh at Laugh-Tale. What if part of that secret knowledge included learning about Imu's existence? What if Roger realized the world was ruled by someone claiming to be an immortal deity, and he specifically developed Kamusari as the counter technique? The evidence keeps piling up when you look at how the world government reacts to certain people. The Gorosei, who are basically Imu's top enforcers and possibly immortal themselves, show genuine concern about Shanks. Not just respect, actual wariness. They literally said dealing with Shanks would be too much to handle in recent chapters. Why? He's powerful, sure, but so are other Yonko. Kaido was called the strongest creature alive. Big Mom had her soul powers and iron body. Yet the Gorosei seem uniquely bothered by Shanks specifically. Could it be because they know what technique he inherited from Roger? Let's also talk about Imu for a second. This mysterious figure sits on the empty throne, commands the Gorosei who transform into apparent, mythical beasts, and seems to have existed for centuries. They clearly view themselves as divine, or at least above all humanity. The symbolism is everywhere, sitting above the world, literally and figuratively, deciding who lives and dies with those creepy frozen bounty posters. Imu represents false divinity, the ultimate tyranny that the D-Clan and the Will of D seem destined to oppose. And what better way to oppose a false deity than with a technique literally named Death of the Divine? Roger passing Kamusari to Shanks also makes perfect narrative sense. Shanks was Roger's apprentice, the one who inherited his straw hat indirectly through Luffy, and clearly learned Roger's fighting style. If Roger created Kamusari specifically for the purpose of challenging the world's hidden supreme ruler, then teaching it to Shanks means passing on the mission itself. Shanks hasn't made his big move yet in the story, but we all know it's coming. What if his ultimate role is to be the one who can actually wound or even kill Imu when the final war breaks out? Let's break down why this theory is absolutely shaking up the fandom and what it means for One Piece's endgame. First major point, the linguistic evidence is too specific to ignore. Japanese fans have shown multiple sources proving that Shenbi carries connotations far beyond just divine departure. The Kojiki references, the historical usage of these specific characters, it all points to a meaning related to killing or nullifying divine beings. Oda is famous for layering his story with real-world mythology and historical references. He's used Norse mythology for Elbaf, Buddhist concepts for various powers, and Japanese folklore constantly. Having Kamusari be a reference to ancient deity-slaying concepts fits perfectly with how Oda builds his world. This isn't fans reaching, this is Oda doing what he always does, hiding deep lore in plain sight for those who dig deep enough. Second point, this theory recontextualizes Roger's entire final journey. We know Roger reached Laugh-Tale, learned the true history, and then turned himself in. But why? What was his plan? If Roger discovered Imu's existence and created Kamusari to counter them, but realized he was dying from his illness, suddenly his actions make more sense. He couldn't finish the job himself, so he started the Great Pirate Era to ensure someone would eventually rise up to complete the mission. He passed his technique to Shanks and his will to the next generation. Roger wasn't just looking for freedom or treasure, he was setting up the pieces to eventually overthrow an immortal tyrant. That's way more epic than just wanting to find one piece. Third point, the Gorosei's fear of Shanks takes on completely new meaning. These five elders bow to IMU and possess transformation abilities that suggest they're way more than human. They've probably existed for centuries, just like IMU. Yet they specifically worried about engaging Shanks, saying he's too much to handle. Not too strong, too much to handle. Like dealing with him creates a specific risk they're not willing to take. If they know Kamusari is the death of the divine technique, and they serve a being who views themselves as a celestial ruler, of course, they'd be terrified of Shanks. He's walking around with the one weapon designed specifically to kill their master. That's not just power scaling. That's a hard counter built into the technique itself. Fourth point, this sets up the most insane possible endgame battle. Imagine the final war. Luffy and the Straw Hats, the Revolutionary Army, the Allied Pirates, all converging on Marijois. Imu finally reveals themselves fully, maybe even shows their true immortal form. The Gorosei transform into their beast forms. The knights deploy. It looks hopeless. And then Shanks arrives, wielding the one technique in the entire world specifically designed to kill celestial tyrants. The symbolism would be perfect. The student of the Pirate King delivering the death of the divine strike that Roger could never land himself. Meanwhile, Luffy, as the next generation embodiment of freedom, delivers the finishing blow. Or maybe Shanks teaches Kamusari to Luffy, completing the cycle of inherited will. Either way, this theory transforms what could have been a standard beat the final boss, ending into something mythologically and thematically perfect. What really gets the community fired up is how this connects to the bigger themes of One Piece. The entire story is about freedom versus control, about false authority versus true strength, about inherited will and dreams that never die. The Celestial Dragons claim divine right to rule. Imu sits above even them, the ultimate false deity. And here's Roger and Shanks carrying the death of the divine itself, waiting for the moment to strike down that tyranny. It's poetic justice on a massive scale. The fandom is going absolutely wild speculating about when and how Kamusari will be used against Imu. Will Shanks get his moment? Will he sacrifice himself passing the technique to Luffy? Could Kamusari be the key to bypassing Imu's apparent immortality? So, what do you think? Is Kamusari really the death of the divine technique meant to kill Imu? Did Roger create it specifically for that purpose after learning the world's secret? And will Shanks be the one to finally use it when the final war kicks off? The evidence is compelling, the timing makes sense, and thematically it's exactly the kind of layered storytelling Oda loves. One thing's for sure, when Shanks finally makes his real move in this story, it's going to be legendary. And if he's carrying the technique designed to kill the ruler of the world, we're in for the most epic battle One Piece has ever shown.